Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you again. Great to hear you chatting.
Yep.
Deanna, is it?
Dina. Dean with an A.
Dina, thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, we encourage conversation here. That's why I open up all the calls before people hop on in case somebody wants to say hello to somebody else. Part of our intention here is for people to develop relationships over time with other people who might be able to contribute something to your business or share something about your business, somebody you can learn from, somebody you can share referrals, etc. So, we're all for people connecting. So glad to hear that. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. David Severance here, delighted to be back with you again today for these Leadership Matters calls. We're calling them Leadership Matters because, first of all, we talk about leadership matters here, but also more importantly, because the success of your business depends on leadership, among many other things. Leadership really matters. And if you did the homework that we talked about last week, you may recognize that there are certain tasks that are the leader's tasks that go above and beyond the typical management of the various sales and processes that are going on in the business on a daily basis. And we're here to focus on that part of the business. So delighted to have everyone back again. We're going to take this one step further today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Severance. I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at Chirag Shah Coaching. Chirag and I started in 2020, and we've been going ever since. Delighted to have so many new folks coming into the CSC family. So today we're going to be talking about vision. One of the most important things that a leader needs to provide to a team is vision. Now, I'll encourage those who are hopping on, if at all possible, please turn your videos on, because one, we'd like to see you, and two, it's easier for us to make connections with you if we can see you. So how many of you, just put into the chat if you would, how many of you have someone on your team who seems less invested in the success of the business than you are? Somebody who doesn't want to come to the meetings that you want to call, somebody that doesn't want to follow the processes you want to follow, somebody who's not really in it the way you are. If you have someone like that on your team, please put yes into the chat. Well, I guess Brad's the only one. So I guess everybody else has some good teammates who are always there for you. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, there's a few others. I thought there are probably a few. Talking with so many clients every week, we hear these kinds of challenges. And obviously it's not their business, it's your business. But it's very common for people to have a perspective on how they should invest themselves in the work that makes sense to them and maybe doesn't make sense to you, or maybe is expressly against the kind of thing that you're asking of them. Certainly, it's great to have, to have the right people on the team and to move the wrong kind of people off the team. I will say many times that the number one rule of effective teaming is get the right people on the team. But very often we have somebody on the team that might not be ideal. Nobody's perfect. Maybe they're a relative, maybe they're a friend, maybe there's someone we brought on because they had good production somewhere else and they just kind of haven't done it for whatever reason for us. A lot of reasons why we might have somebody who's on the team that we want to keep on the team, or we haven't asked to leave the team just because we're not at that point. And so the question is, what does it take to have really good people on your team to make the investment that you want them to make? Right? It's your business and you've chosen to run the business. You've chosen to run this part of your life in this way because it makes sense to you. And obviously they're coming at it from whatever makes sense to them. What we want to focus on today is this topic of vision, because vision is one of the most powerful tools you have to compel that engagement, that enrollment, that buy-in from the people who work with you. So if I ask how many of you have a clear vision for where you want the business to go by a certain point in time, would you be able to say yes, or kind of yes, or not really sure? Because many of the agents that I talk with, their view of the future is pretty much, well, same as last year, but 5% more. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there could be more than that. And if you're thinking about it from the point of view of how engaged your team is, the team might make more of an investment in what it is you guys are doing, where you want to go, if there were more to the business in their eyes than same as last year plus 5% more. So what I wanted to talk about today was how you can think about creating a vision that inspires and motivates those who are working with you so that they'll choose to sprint rather than jog along with you. So let me pull up a few slides, things to think about here. Person, by the way, I'll ask you to share that other link at the end of the call when I pull up that other slide. So you can just prepare that. That'd be great. Thank you. All right, so let me pull this up. Don't post it yet, please. Thanks, Ferguson. Okay. Yep. Switch that one. Okay. Okay, got it. Creating an inspiring vision for your team. First of all, I want to say one thing. What's the difference between a vision and a dream? Because I hear lots of people say, I want to have we want to be number one in the market, or we want to be, the best of the best, or we want to hit 2 billion in sales this year, or whatever. Those are really nice statements, but for most teams, it's just a dream. It's just a nice idea. It's not really a vision. So we'll talk about that a little bit further as we go. For those of you who don't know me, and for those of you who weren't able to hop on the call last week, I'll just repeat this one slide. I've been working with Compass now for 3 years. I work with agents one-on-one every week. Chirag and I co-facilitate our mastermind programs together, and I do live events when Chirag does them. I usually do a piece or two of them as well. So working with Compass agents every single day for the last 3 years. But before that, I was really lucky to coach people in many different successful businesses around the world. Some of them are the largest companies of the world, like some of them listed here. Many of them are smaller startups, mid-sized businesses as well, in North America, Europe, the Middle East, East Asia, and South America. So all of those very different ways of doing business, we try to bring to folks that we work with here and make it applicable to your business. As Chirag often says, our goal is to help you try to implement things. And so my goal is to challenge you or to inspire you to spend 2% of your time on leadership matters, on leadership things in your business, leaving you 98% of the time for all the other stuff that you do, which some of it might be even wasted time. So if you work 50 hours a week, I'm asking you to spend 1 hour a month, 1 hour a week on leadership stuff, 30 minutes here on the call and 30 minutes with your team with these action steps that we put out at the end of every call. So what is vision? Well, there's a lot of ways to think about what vision is. One way to think about it is simply a clear and compelling picture or image of the future you intend to create. Clear and compelling are the key words here. If it's not clear, who cares? Nobody even understands what you're talking about. If it's not compelling, they understand what you're talking about, but they're not interested. So if you have the opportunity to inspire and motivate your team members towards a goal that you feel is worthy and they're truly inspired for it, they're much more likely to make the investment in time and effort in the business that you're looking for. So the question then is, how do we get to a clear and compelling picture or image of the future that we want to create? Well, there's a lot of self-awareness in there, which is thinking about, where do I want to take the business and why, right? What's it going to look like at some point in the future? But as a general kind of working definition, let's just go with this for now. A clear and compelling picture or image of the future you intend to create. What does it include? Well, it can include a whole lot of different things. It doesn't have to include all these things. So when you see the list here, don't feel like you have to clarify all this stuff. Most people's vision of their business might include 1 or 2 or 3 of these areas at a given time that they're especially focusing on. Certainly, a vision usually includes a certain set of clear goals or achievements, if you will. Very often, it'll include certain actions that you want to be taking or you want other people to be taking in your business. It could be a process that you want to develop on the team that you haven't used at all. It could be likely to sell. You don't know anything about that, and there's a whole bunch of action plans attached to that. Maybe that's something that you want to bring into the business that isn't there right now. Or maybe it's another way for sharing information or staying in contact with each other, making a change in something that you already have. Culture is a big issue. How do you build a culture of success on your team over time and keep it there? If you have people who are not motivated, if you have people who are not accurate, if you have people who are not willing to be team members and team players, these are all pieces of your culture that at some point or another you might want to shift. Client experience is, do you have a different idea about what you want the client experience to be a year from today compared to now? Maybe you want to raise your game to work with more luxury clients. Maybe you want them to come to know more about how you can serve them because they don't know about some services that you have. Or maybe you want them to experience all of your agents in a similar, consistent way because it's part of your brand. And up to now, they haven't done that, right? Different clients tell you they get different kinds of an experience with your different agents. So sometimes that's an important area of focus. And finally, client offerings. You might offer something new or different from what you do today. Maybe you add staging to your services or something like that. Any one of these items could be part of a leader's vision for the next 6 months, 12 months, 3 months, whatever it is. And of course, there are others. This is not the exhaustive list, but you can get an idea of what areas of the business you want to include when you're thinking about where you'd like to be a year or so from today, let's say. How do you make a vision inspiring? Well, first of all, it has to be clear and compelling, right? We said that a minute ago. If it's not clear, no one knows what you're talking about, and they're not going to be inspired by it. If it's compelling, it means it has something in there that compels their interest and their activity. That means it has to touch something internal to them, right? You can't throw out a vision that matters to you that doesn't matter to them and then expect them to be inspired by it. And unfortunately, this is what often happens. We might be inspired by something. We really want to add staging. Boy, do we think staging is going to be the best thing for our business ever. Man, nobody else is doing it around here, and I know how to do it. It's going to be awesome. But if nobody else on your team cares about it, then they might not make use of it. Of course, Compass has the same challenge, right? They've got all these great tools for you to use, and some of them kind of go unused by a lot of folks, right? Somehow those people are not buying in to some of the stuff that Compass offers. So how do you make it inspiring? Well, several things. First, you need to be clear about what inspires you. You cannot inspire and motivate anyone else until you're clear about what motivates and inspires you first. And so there's some kind of like soul searching there a little bit, like what is it that really turns me on about this business? And what is it that would turn me on if I could make it happen in the next 6 months or 12 months? You have to find out what that is first. And if you don't have it, then that's okay. It's like you're just going to be like steady as she goes kind of a thing for a certain period of time. But don't expect others to be inspired by steady as she goes necessarily. Second, you need to understand what inspires each person on your team. What is it that motivates them? Why did they join this business? Why did they join your team? What's their dream for their career? What's their dream for their life? You need to understand what that is because your vision needs to speak to that. And so if you don't know what it is that motivates your people, have a conversation. It's not difficult. It's very common for us to hear from agents who are leading teams, people who have been working with people for a while. If I say, well, what's the number one motivator for each person on your team? They'll say, I know a couple of the people, but not everybody. And so there's a little work to do, which is not difficult, to just understand what is it that motivates them to stay in this business and what would motivate them to do more. Third, clarify each goal or outcome or change. You need to be specific. The key word here is specific. You can't throw out something that's vague. You can't say, let's do the same as last year, but a little better. That's not specific enough. It's too vague. It's too boring. There's nothing for anybody to hold on to there. So I'll give you a couple of examples in a minute here, but the key word here is specific. You have to identify specifically what that future looks like a year from today. You may remember one of the most inspiring visions that was ever laid out by a US president was when John F. Kennedy said in 1961 or 2, we will put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of this decade, right? That was something that inspired the whole nation, right? Everybody kind of rallied around that and said, wow, because everybody could picture it. It was very specific, putting someone on the moon and then bring them back safely. It was a specific thing, not just we're going to increase our space exploration activities and capabilities. It was something that was put down there as like a stake in the ground. This is where we will be by a certain point in time. And so you need to think about what is it that you can say specifically about where you want to be at a certain point in the future. And finally, you need to find that nexus between what inspires you and the people that you collaborate with. That is, if you have this inspiration or this kind of like motivation and others have this, that's fine. You need to find where those things cross. And that's what you need to address with people. Right? Understanding their motivation is not enough. You have to speak to it. You have to find a way to connect your business goals to what they care about most. And if you can do that, then there's no doubt they're going to be more inspired by what you say. Very often what people do is they throw out what's important to me, the leader, and everybody kind of can take it or leave it. And some take it and some leave it. And so what you end up with is 25% of your people who are really inspired and motivated, 50% who are willing to do the work and they're willing to do something, and then another 25% that don't seem to really care for some reason. And all of that is kind of it represents a loss of potential value that your business could create. So if you can do these 4 steps, then you're on the way to providing something to others that they will care about as much as you do. So here's a couple of examples, some not so good examples. The first one's a little bit dull and vague. Hey, next year we're going to sell more. Great. That's what most leaders often say, is some version of that. Yeah, we're going to sell more next year. It's going to be great. And that's all. But, how much are we talking about? 2% more, 5% more, 50% more? 2% more, 5% more, 50% more? What's up with that? Or how about this one, missing in action? Somebody asked the team leader, hey, where are we headed? And you say, where are we headed? Good question. I'm not really sure, actually. I guess we'll just keep doing what we've always done. Can you imagine how deflating it would be for someone who's motivated enough to ask that question, to ask it? Right? If somebody asks you that question, where are we headed? What they're saying is, I care about where we're headed. And if the answer you give them is, I don't know, I guess we'll just keep doing the same. That's a huge disconnect. They're going to feel it as, oh my gosh, I've tied my wagon onto some train that is not going anywhere. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a hard charging, vision that's going to get you to here and there and there and there, the year after that and the year after that and the year after that. But it does force us to think about what is our intention for the business. What if someone were to ask you, where are we headed? And finally, detach from reality. Yeah, next year we're going to be number one in our market. Well, this year we were number 389. If you throw something like that out there, some people will say, just blowing smoke. What's that? That's totally detached from reality. If you're in the top 10, if you're in the top 20, great. Maybe you have a shot at it. In that case, it's a different kind of a statement. But it's very easy to throw out a nice dream statement. And that's why I say that the difference between a dream and a vision is an actionable plan. If you throw out next year, we're going to be number one on all teams at Compass, you better have something to back that up. If not, it's just a dream. And so if you have an actionable plan to get there, okay, then you've got a vision because you've got a plan that's going to make it happen. What we often see is just somebody throws out a nice round number. We're going to be number one next year. We're going to do 100 million next year. We're going to do 500 million next year. It's just a round number. If you catch yourself throwing out a round number, I want you to stop yourself at that moment and say, wait a minute, have I really thought about this or am I just throwing a number out there? Because in most cases, that's exactly what we're doing. I talked with a client the other day and he was just starting his business and he was all alone. And I said, where do you want to be in a year from today? And I had him write it down on paper. And he said, I'm going to have 10 employees. And I said, wow, 10 employees in 1 year. That's pretty good. And I said, full time? Oh yeah, full time. I said, okay, so how much are you going to pay these people? He said, well, I think I'm going to basically have to pay like $70,000 a head. So 10 people, that's $700,000 in costs. Now that's a big chunk of money to take on. And I'm almost certain he'll never get close to that. But it was very easy for him to throw out the nice round number. I'm going to have 10 people working for me in a year. What are some better examples, some different ways you might say things? And these aren't these aren't intended to be perfect ways to say anything, but see if you can detect a difference between the three that are on this page and the ones that are on the next page. By this time next year, we will have developed 2 new farms that will be generating 3 sales a month. And for a small team, 3 sales a month is significant. That's 36 more deals a year. Susan, I intend to do everything necessary for you to hit 200,000 in GCI this year. Imagine if somebody came to you and said that. Would you be happy to hear something like that? Most likely you would. And how about when we hit all 3 of these goals that I've just outlined, I'm taking you all to Hawaii for a week on my dime. For some people, that would be the most motivating thing of all. The point here is there's a difference between these statements and the others. For one, they're more specific. 2, they speak to something that the other person may care about. For example, this first statement. You may have someone on your team who's always wanted to develop a farm. They've been intrigued by the idea. For whatever reason, you haven't let them do it. But this year you say, you know what? A farm is in my vision for this year. In fact, 2 farms. You're going to be handling one, I'll be handling the other, and we're going to be doing 3 sales a month as a result of that. For somebody who's wanted to go after something like that and gets the go ahead from you, even for the focused, for you to say, that's what we're going to focus on this year, highly motivating. Second one, for Susan, who told you already that she wants to hit 150 or 200,000 in GCI this year, and you come back to her and you say, yeah, I'm going to do everything we need to do to make sure you get there. That's a powerful statement of support that a motivated person would become even more motivated by. And free trip to Hawaii or whatever it is, absolutely motivating for some. But you can see how these things are tied to particular people's interests, right? You need to find that nexus between what matters to you, which might be 3 sales a month, and what matters to the other, which might be the opportunity to manage a farm. So there's a huge difference between simply saying, let's go out and have a good year. Let's do the same thing we did last year, but 5% better. And something much more specific, something much more geared towards people saying, yeah, I want a piece of that. And what I find with many team leaders is they just haven't really thought it through. It's not that it's difficult, it's just that they haven't thought it through. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to share in just a minute a worksheet that we've prepared for you to think through these kinds of questions. And I'm going to ask you to take 30 minutes or less to work through the questions on that worksheet. And then after you've done that, that should give you enough clarity to write down a couple of statements that really capture the crux of your thinking. That is the things that you think are most important for your team to achieve, to shift, to change, to develop between now and whatever that time might be. Now, you might have done your business planning for this particular year, but are you the kind of person who simply takes last year's plan and just plugs in a few new numbers and just goes for it? Just leaves it at that? That might be sufficient. It might be fine. But if you have some other interests or desires for the business, that might not be enough. And so it might require a little more thought, a little more discussion with teammates or your sales manager or somebody else about where the business can go. And so after you've filled out the worksheet, then you can ask yourself, if you write down a few things that you think you would like to communicate to the rest of the team, where you want the team to go, you can write them down and literally write them down and then ask yourself, if my boss said this to me, would I be inspired? Or a related question would be, who do I think specifically on my team would be motivated by this statement that I just wrote down? And it can help you think a little bit more in a nuanced way. What is it that I need to communicate to my team for them to be compelled, to be inspired? Remember, a vision should be clear and compelling, a clear and compelling picture or image of the future you intend to create. So let me just share that worksheet for you. If you have any questions about any of this, just drop them in the chat. I'll pull up this other sheet. So I'm going to pull this up and share it with you now. This, like all of our documents and like all of the slide decks and the recordings of these calls, it's all going to be in the platform. So that's where you can find this stuff. Herson, if you could please post a link to this as well in the chat, that'd be great. So this vision development worksheet, what we're talking about here is a simple set of questions that you can ask yourself to create a vision that's a little bit more inspiring. It's not difficult. It just requires some thought. And so this isn't something that you blow through in 5 minutes. It's something that you might think about and then, maybe answer a day later, or ask yourself these questions and then come back to it in a couple of days and think a little bit more. First question is a very kind of general one. What does success look like to me 1 year from today? If you could fast forward to the end of 2023 or the middle of 2024 and ask and be able to say, wow, that was a really successful period for my business, what would have happened, right? That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. And the second question is something more similar to that. What specific goals will we have achieved by whatever period of time? And if you're not thinking in terms of a year, that's okay. A vision can be any length of time. You could have a development process for a new person on your team that's going to take 3 or 4 years to show that person everything he or she needs to know to be a great agent, for example. So you might have a 3-year vision for a particular person. Or you might have a 1 month or 2 month vision for getting your CRM finally organized, getting things finally in there that need to be in there, for example. But we're putting it in as 1 year from today. And by the way, when you download this, you can just type right into it, or you can print it out right by hand if you prefer that. What actions, if any, will we be doing on a regular basis by then that we don't do now? That's a great question to ask. That gets to process. You have to think about, if my goal is X, can I get there with the same processes that I have, or do I need some difference in the process? Maybe I need to develop a new process, something that I'm doing or someone else is doing that we're not doing now. Could be sharing information. It could be the way that you use the Compass tools. Could be something else. But it's one way to think about what are the actions or behaviors or processes that are going to be happening at that time. What new market or process or offering will we have developed by that time? Are you talking about going into a new geographic area, perhaps? Are you talking about revamping a process about how you handle, I don't know, transaction management, something like that? Or you want to offer a new thing to potential clients? If so, what is that? Why does that matter to you? And of course, the why is inherent in all of these questions, right? Like, why do I want to go there? And you ought to be able to communicate that to your team when the time comes. Structure. Do our structure or staff needs need to be different at that time? If so, how am I going to account for that? How will I manage that? What will that look like at that particular time? Do I need more agents, fewer agents? Do I need another assistant or a different assistant or my first assistant? It's important for you to think about what are the resources that you need in order to create any other change that you want to create. Culture, this is important. How will it feel for people to be a member of our team by then? Your culture is about how you do things and how people experience those things within your team. You know, many people talk about how they would be willing to do anything for their clients, and I know that all of you will. But I'd like to just kind of like put into your mind this idea that you actually have two sets of clients that you serve. You have external clients, which are people who are buying and selling homes, and you have internal clients, which are the people who you work through for that to happen. The people who work for you and with you and alongside you. They're the ones that you need to account for. They're the ones that you need to support most of all, because without them, you don't get the results that you want out there, right? So think about your team as an internal client and ask yourself, what's the experience for someone on my team to be on my team? And if you don't know what that experience is, ask them. Maybe they see it as totally haphazard and disorganized and chaotic, and they might not want to be there. Maybe they see it as unfair and unjustified because you ask too much. Maybe they think it's awesome and terrific and they don't want you to change a thing. Do you really know how everyone on your team experiences being on your team right now? And if it's not ideal or it's not what you want them to experience, then how can you change things for them in the future so that it becomes an ideal experience for them where they don't want to go anywhere else? Because you never want to see any good person walk away. Clients, what will be different about how our clients experience us by then? Maybe there's a way that you want to change their experience of you. If so, what would that be like? And finally, a more general question, excluding all the stuff we've talked about above, is there something else that might be different for our team by intention, right? Something that is part of my vision for what might be different by then. So that document will be up for you shortly in the platform. I'd like to suggest everybody spend 30 minutes or so, or maybe like a couple of different blocks of 10, 15 minutes to just go through those questions and then think about it for a couple of days and then come back to them again. Vision work is generally not something that you do overnight. It's not something that you do in one sitting. There may be some parts of your business that you really are clear that you want to create over a period of time. Maybe you want to add staging, for example. Okay, great. That's very kind of a simple concept. We're going to add this service. But to think through how to make it really happen means you need to develop a plan for how you can get there, right? And so envisioning is one thing, but creating an actionable plan for the vision, obviously, is the second step. Not everybody goes through that, right? They let all the business stuff kind of crowds in and they've got this idea, but they never really go any further than the idea. And then a year passes and the idea never comes to pass because everybody's been busy doing other things. We didn't really have an actionable plan for it. So let me ask you, how many of you, okay, thanks for putting that up. Yep. So how many of you have had a challenge with getting your people motivated to follow a vision before? And or how many of you have struggled to create a clear and compelling vision before? Just drop something in the chat about that, please. And Dina, since you raised your hand, I'll call on you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what made you raise your hand there?
Sure. I've had a team for many years and they've, some have come and gone. They either weren't the right fit. They would, kind of mess up the team culture, the morale. They would want more than their fair share, so to speak. So I've tried to create a vision for my team if I'm slowly stepping out of the business and I'm growing them to take on more. Yep. And so it's exciting, but scary at the same time. And I've learned to delegate, which I was never good at, but I'm still trying to figure out, how can I show them a vision when I don't really know the time frame because our market has changed so much. Like I wanted to be not in any appointments starting next year. Well, financially now, I don't know if that's going to be realistic. My team hasn't got enough experience, some of them, to step up enough because they went into multiple offer situations, having, 10 offers in for buyers and not getting anything. And, so everybody's kind of struggling. I can't just say, okay, you're taking over,
Sure. Yep. Makes perfect sense. Yep, that's a common challenge. There are folks who want to step back from production a little bit, and some of our clients have successfully done that, and we'd be happy to like introduce you to some of those folks. You know, there's so much value for all of you to get to know other people in our network, in the community, because so many of them have done some things that some of you are trying to do. But, you know, stepping back from production, great. I can understand why you might want to do that. What you need to make sure you can lock into is WIFM. WIFM is what? What's in it for me?
Right.
And so it's difficult. I understand it's difficult for you to know when you're going to get to the point where you can trust everybody to get to that particular point. But a question for you is, do they really care? You know, are they going to make the effort to get to that point sooner rather than later? So you do have an opportunity to inspire and motivate. And so if you can find a way to share those thoughts in a way that they see the benefit, they see the connection to something that motivates them, then they're much more likely to put in the effort to help you get there sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And that may be one vision for your business, and there may be other areas too. And so even if you don't have a specific deadline for that, that's okay. There may be something else that you have a deadline for that you can also kind of make clear for everybody.
Well, I did make it clear, like I haven't worked with buyers in years. So the buyer's agents are getting that. The listing, I was the only one until this year on the team that would list. Now I'm allowing 2 of them who have experience and, you know, really stepped up to list. The other ones, the buyer agents, you know, I don't know that they're feeling so great about that. They're accepting of it, but I know they hope to see in the future that they'll have that opportunity as time goes on.
Yep, got it. So it's important for you to recognize what aspect of that opportunity is most compelling to them.
Okay.
If you don't know what that is, then you're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit. So you should have a conversation with them and say, you know, I've shared with you a bit, and I've shared with you why I want to go in this direction. What's most interesting about this for you?
Okay.
Or what is the most compelling part of this for you personally, and why? Right? You need to ask a question like that and make sure that they say in their own words what that is. And then you confirm it back to them. You say, yeah, I'll be with you in just a minute, Brad. You confirm it back to you and say, what I heard was X, Y, Z. Am I hearing that correctly? And if you are, they'll tell you. If you're not, they'll kind of correct whatever it is you give them. And then you can say, okay, this is what I need to think about for this person as we continue. Brad, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I just had a question. I guess it's for Deanna. Why would you want to limit some of your agents only to working with buyers as opposed to sellers? Our business, we do about 45% of our work with buyers and 55% with our sellers. And all of the brokers on our team work on both sides of the transactions. And having been in this for 35 years, I don't think I would be anywhere near as good at doing what I do if I didn't involve myself in both sides of the transaction. And then my second question is, because listings are the source of so much business, those buyers agents aren't being able to benefit from that.
Yeah, it's we've been very successful this way. It doesn't mean we will in the future, but we're the #1 in our area, and we do over $1 million in GCI, just the 6 of us, one being my husband. And it's just worked well. People have their expertise in certain areas on the team. And my buyer agents, they don't know how to list, you know, and it's a training that I've started with them, but I don't see that they could do a good job and get the listing. I've tried a couple times, and with, you know, you can't lose the listings right now. You know, there's not enough inventory. And I know I shouldn't be saying it like that, but I just feel like we have something that's working really well, and they're great at what they're doing, and they're learning continually as buyer agents. They're all newer. They've been on the team, you know, they've been at Realtors for just, you know, 2 years, let's say, most of them.
All right, folks, I'm sorry we're a little bit over time. Thanks for the question, Brad. I'll encourage Brad and Dina and any of you to follow up offline with each other. If something comes up in a call and you have a curious question, make a call. You know, make the connection, ask your question, learn what you can learn. It's a great opportunity to grow your network. within Compass. And I'll just remind everybody that on the fourth Wednesday of every month, we will have an implementation extra half hour. So those particular calls are scheduled for an hour. We'll do our typical 30 minutes at the regular time, but we'll leave 30 minutes after that for anyone who has any questions. So if anything comes up on any of these calls earlier in the month, you try something, it didn't quite work, or you have another question or something, we want to address those at that time. So keep any questions in mind. And when that time comes, we're happy to talk about it. So have a great day, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Continue to lead. Your team needs your leadership every bit as much as it needs your management skill. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.